Welcome to another deep dive. Last week we were off. I was in Kentucky. You were in the Northeast, and
Vermont.
We were, I don't know, almost as far away as you could get.
We were doing national ministry.
Yeah, that's
national
what it was.
ministry, telling people about Jesus.
So we've been running this summer. I was looking at my calendar. This was the third week in a month that I had something going on with ministry with the teenagers or kids or something like that. So we've been doing a lot of stuff. We had VBS and Jam where we ministered to Pine Brook. And then this past week, the 5 teenagers, myself and Becca Reed, went down to Logan County, Kentucky.
Logan County.
And had a good week of ministry down there. But before we get to that, I wanted to hear, we had a cool interaction Sunday into Monday. So I think we just want to celebrate a little bit.
Well, Sunday was a day where we saw 2 people that came to the church, both through the internet in 2 different ways. Mm-hmm. One was, young man looked it up, closest church, walked from his home. A lady, couple of kids, husband, nice lady came in. She had gone to, hey, this is a good thing and you can help us here. She went to Google and we had the best reviews she saw. We're considered a friendly church on Google. And so she came and in our buddy, what's his name? That's from down the street. We met at VBS. Dustin was there, and I found out I was not his favorite pastor that morning. But Dustin was sitting there, and he had all the security stuff on. He was excited, so excited to be at church. But it was just a day where so many new people came in, and we saw a lot of collaboration. We saw the young man that came in. I met him. We talked for a minute. I could tell, God was working on his heart. Sent him into the True Seekers, and they had a ball with him. And then my wife spent a lot of time with the lady that came, and I've been connecting with her this week. But it wasn't just Amy and I. A bunch of people come up saying hi and engaging and all these different things. Well, then some time opened for me up on Monday, and I turned around. I got on the phone, and I promised this young man I'd have lunch with him. So I called him. He said, "Sure, let's do it." So we met, and really enjoyed my conversation with him. Mm-hmm. A sense that God was working on his life, that God was really making himself present. And so got to that point, that intersection of redemption, got to that point, and I just started sharing the gospel. I said, have you ever heard about how to make Jesus Christ Lord of your life? And he knew a lot about Jesus and experienced Jesus in many ways, but he had never heard that understanding that there's a moment where we give our lives to Christ. And I just went through. I took out a napkin and I started going through Romans, and I'm drawing it and showing him, and he's like, this is amazing. And so I said, well, we can pray together whenever you want. I said that I want to encourage you to pray to make Jesus Christ Lord of your life. Take whatever's on the throne of your life and put Jesus on. And I just sensed it was right then. We held each other's hands in that corner of Panera, and he just prayed to accept Jesus Christ as Lord of his life. And we've been going back and forth in text, and he's been catching up with church stuff, and is supposed to be here this weekend. And then fast forward to later that night, and we have a couple guys on the team that we don't know if they know Christ yet. And I get the sense when I'm with a couple of them that they're really seeking. About 3 of them actually. And one of them I had like a 25-minute conversation with about his journey. And turns out we used to run around the same places down in Florida when we were younger. But it was that moment of just having the conversation. I've been talking about conversations that matter. And God was just working. And what I loved about it is the moment this young man came to Christ, I was on the phone with a couple hours later. I was on the phone with a life group leader who was so excited and started naming other people in this group that can help disciple this young man. So I'll disciple him for a little bit, but we're going to push down that ministry, and it's that's the model we're looking for. We're pushing down that ministry so that he will connect, because that's what he needs, is connection with people of God.
Your sermon Sunday was on collaboration, and you're going to help me with these. I memorize scripture differently than most people. I get the summary version.
Okay, yeah.
So help me with but it's the, one planted, one watered, one reaped the harvest. And I keep thinking of that when we talk about collaboration, because I think it's very rare that we walk through someone from planting to harvest. And there's so many other people. Anytime somebody's come to Christ, there are so many people that have had impact or influence for the kingdom in a person's life before they become a Christian, before they get involved in a life group in a church, before they get connected, before they've given their life to Christ. There's so many touch points of Christians, and for good or bad, right?
Well, yeah, and unique touch points, because Peter and Cornelius came from two different worlds, and God brought them together in collaboration. Peter's walking into uncharted territory, and God prepares him with the vision, and that vision was more than just food. It was about, it's no longer us against them.
Right.
It is a gospel that covers all people with God's grace. And then here, Cornelius, I hope I get that right. Cornelius is on the other end, and he's just being obedient. I mean, what an intense situation. Here you have a guy who's part of the 5 cohorts of Italian soldiers in the in that area at that time, and he just, immediately, we find out that he's chasing after God. He's as Jewish as you can be without being Jewish. Yeah. And then the moment he's told to go get Peter, and it's kind of it's a little bit of a puzzle. Go get Simon Peter, who's with Simon the Tanner. So I was glad they got the right Simon. And he sends him immediately. And in that group, it says it had said that Cornelius was a devout man. He found another devout man and sent him. And then while that's going on, Peter's being prepared for these men to show up. Eventually they're in the house, and then they're on their way. And then they get there, and the first thing Cornelius says is, tell us about the things of God. Then all these people come to the Lord. There's a collaboration from two different worlds, colliding in many ways. And the kingdom is erupting. We're going to watch as we continue to go through. And I sent you a map.
Yeah.
The kingdom erupts. This week we're in the hub with Antioch, and we are part of that work. I was having a conversation recently, and I was asking about talking with somebody who I really respect, and I said, how many people in your church are reaching people with the gospel? And we started talking about events, and I said, no, how many people? And we had a really interesting conversation, because I really believe when the Spirit of God is moving, God is using different believers all through a person's life to collaborate together to come to that point where decision is to be made. And that intersection of redemption, I love that Psalm passage where it talks about people being sick and lost and sad and all these things, and the people cry out to the Lord, and the Lord just shows up, because God wants to give people His mercy. And when He extends His mercy, there's a moment I call an intersection of redemption where people can just embrace the Lord. And I saw it again, and I was sitting by a guy that I saw it a couple of years ago at the softball the other night, where the reality is we are image bearers, and we make proclamations, and we're heralds of the gospel of Jesus Christ that saves people's lives.
And that us versus them, there's a bit of that from church to non-church, but even with it's not my ministry versus your ministry. No. It's not this class versus this class. It's not this church versus this church. We are all part, the body of Christ, globally, nationally, town, city, county, working together to make disciples. It's not we can't view it as a competition. No. That's not going to be beneficial. It's not about numbers but about impact.
Well, we learned that through COVID, didn't we? COVID reminded us real quick that things can change real quick, and measurements became so different. And I think about God has given all of us as part of the body different gifts. We talk about that in if you have this gift, you're a teacher. If you have this gift, within the evangelistic context, within the reaching people with the gospel context, we all have different gifts. Some people are connectors, right? Where you connect somebody to somebody who, some people are just praying. I think of the lady who comes in my house all the time. She's praying that God will move. When I'm sharing the gospel, I will send her something and say, hey, God is moving. We have disciplers that really are gifted in the consistent discipleship of people. It's finding your niche within the movement of God in people's lives. And it's just exciting to think that what if just half our church really engaged that gift and said, you know what, I'm going to be a connector. I know a lot of people don't know Christ, and I'm going to get better at talking about, but I'm going to bring people in their life in the backyard that can talk to them and engage them in a way that I can't. So it's exciting.
Not everyone has to be the evangelist, so
No.
to speak. You can find,
No.
I always talk to the kids about, do you care about your friend? Yeah. Do you feel comfortable with your friend? Yeah. Then if you can talk to your friend, your close friend about Jesus. If there's a trust, there's a trust there. There's a kinship, there's a friendship, and you can do that. You don't have to be the cold call evangelist,
Hey.
Which is just awkward. But one of the other things I've been thinking about is, I think you said it in your sermon Sunday, and it's been coming up a lot, is stepping into what God is already doing. And I would say that summarized our trip with the kids.
Yeah.
We had a lot of, I'll call it downtime, from a planning schedule
Margin.
way. Right.
Margin.
We had a lot of margin. But there were a couple times where, just the way I'm wired and just kind of the DNA of our church is we schedule something and we just follow the schedule, right? That's kind of how I operate. And on every mission trip I've ever been on has been not that way.
It's never that way.
There's a schedule, but it's always a loose schedule, and it's always kind of this, okay, we'll start here and we'll see where it goes. And so there were a couple of times where we finished a project early, or we helped the organization, we were done, and then we had downtime and we were waiting for the area director to go line something up for us. And those times are traditionally been hard for me, because I'm going, we just made this trip, I got these kids, they came to work, we came to do something, and we're just sitting here. So this year I took a different approach, and I started saying, okay, God, what can we do? What is your goal for us in this moment? And so we were sitting outside of a food bank one morning, and we got to pray with 3 or 4 people, just talk to them, hey, how you doing? Hear their story, and love on them in a way. One of them was very vocal about how they felt about Christians in church and the struggles they had in their life. Another was just so happy that he had somebody to talk to, and some people were just helping carry out groceries. We got the minister to a pastor and just hear his heart for ministry and pray for his vision for his church, the church that God placed him at right now. And that's something I'll be talking about in a few weeks when I preach, is how do you respond to the disruptions of the plan, right? And when the plans are good, we need to plan, we need to have goals, we need to have godly vision, all of that is good. But how do you respond when that plan goes off the rails and you're stuck and you're sitting there and you're just like, what do I do now? Things have gone a little sideways, and that's where God, how do you stepping into what God is doing, and God's already working in the lives of these people. That's what Crew has been teaching us, everybody, not teaching us, reminding us that God's trying to draw everybody to himself, and everybody's on a spiritual journey. And where can we step into what God is already doing in the lives of the people we encounter to help point them back to Christ?
And you can't do that without margin.
No.
You can't do that margin. God gave you that margin. And it's interesting, most of the stories I've heard from my 2 kids that went was time in that margin, where you guys did things creatively and did things, that and really outside their comfort zone. I mean, big time outside their comfort zone.
Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon, I forget what day, I can't remember what day it is now, but the one day we had to go to a park. And you should have seen our group. We pull up, and you guys like, okay, I want you to go hand out popsicles at this apartment complex in the park and just play games with kids for like 3 hours. And we pull up, and the kid's like, no, I can't. This is weird. We don't do that enough. We don't go door to door asking people, hey, come play in the park. Here's a popsicle. Like they were just, their brains were just going. But I said, okay, I'll set some boundaries for you. I said, we're not going to go knock on every door, and say, hey kids, come play with popsicles, because that's just a little weird. But I said, we're going to go to the park. We're going to put on some music. We're going to start playing basketball. We're going to start playing, volleyball and soccer and swinging on the swings. And wouldn't you know it, after 5 minutes, we got 10 people there hanging out with us in the park. And that was so far out of their comfort zone, but yet God showed. It was really, I was so proud of our kids that day. Kid walks over, and I tell one of our girls, hey, just go say hi to her, and she did. And then that girl was like her best friend for the next 3 hours. It was really just to watch how our kids responded, despite being, or in spite of being out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
But they utilized the margin that we had to be part of that process, the planting, watering, growing, harvest, of a person for Christ. So
something about those trips, there's, and I love the fact that it was a pretty small trip, because these kids were forced to engage each other and to work side by side with each other. Many of them had not. I mean, maybe a little bit here and there, but I mean, just that opportunity to come together as a group and see God work. And we're still having conversations in our house talking about it and seeing those things. And that's one thing we talk about, these, young adults, they come into church, and the challenge is where do they fit, and then what does God call them to outside of the church, and how do we get them ready and articulate what the expectations that God has for them, and how they walk with God, and we pray for them, because they're walking into these moments that honestly 25 years ago we didn't walk into, and walking in grace and truth, and God's using some amazing collaboration throughout that generation, where they're starting to find each other a little bit and starting to go, okay, here is the next, they've got to be part of the next move of God. And I think God is preparing them. They may do it a little differently. And I think we see these churches, one thing I got laughed about one time is somebody was at church and they're like, did you hear about this church? And I said, what? Well, they took a day and they didn't have service and they went and served. I'm like, well, isn't worship and service, they're connected. Yeah, but I said, well, there's no yeah, but they feel called as a church, and there's several churches all over America that do that. They go out and they go out.
Right. Yeah.
And we want that consistently every day, that margin to really impact people with the gospel. And it gets exciting because you just never know what's coming. Sunday morning, Amy and I we were coming to church, we were going to life group, we were coming to church, we were going home, taking a nap, and then we were going to go out and do some things. We came to church, never made the life group, spent the whole time with people that had just walked in the lobby. I got through second service, we had a great service, second service, went home, crashed, and then we both looked at each other and said, yeah, we'll do that tomorrow. Maybe more. And, but that margin, even when you come to church, and this is a challenge, we come to church like, well, I want to see them and I want to see them. And I mean, are the same way in some ways, we want to connect with people and we want to do that. But really, we have to have a little bit of ourselves on mission, because you never know when somebody, and you made an impact, because the guy with the beard, said hi to my buddy. But and other people did too. They were all, our church is so friendly, but we need to make a little bit of that margin, make sure we're looking around for those people that aren't quite connected.
That's the thing. What the mission trip reminded me of was taking time to look for what God's up to, looking for that person, that moment, that opportunity, instead of being so focused on my itinerary for the day. Whether that be, I want to go and talk to you, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go home and do this. And you can have that plan, but as you're going around, look for that person that's kind of sitting over there, and you're like, man, they probably just need somebody to say hi to them. God, how do you want me to, like, having that awareness of God's Spirit as you go through that itinerary, that plan, and allowing Him to kind of maybe sidetrack your plans a little bit.
That's just awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this week we go to Antioch,
All right.
Hub, so I'm excited about that. Don't miss it.
So thanks for joining us. I just have one announcement. I'm just going to throw that out there. We're going to keep the announcements quick this
Can I
week.
get one too?
You went first then.
Starting Point.
Oh yeah.
If anybody's listening to this, knows somebody that's been in church for a while, wants to go into membership, learn more about the church, Starting Point, we're doing it 3 Wednesday nights, starting at 7 o'clock next week. We'll actually have 6:30. We'll start prayer here in my office, online, and then I'll be shutting down with a group, and they'll continue, and then 7 o'clock we'll have Starting Point. So if you have anybody that's been looking at membership that would like to know more about the church, we're just going to have a ball those 3 nights.
We are trying to beef up our tech ministry, and by that I mean we need
help,
sound, presenter, Wirecast, all those people that are in the back. We need to like double or triple that team. So if you're out there and you have those gifts, where you don't have to be a computer genius,
or you're trainable,
or you're willing to learn. You can push a button and pay attention. We're looking for some people that are willing to serve in those areas at both services, just to help spread out the work of that ministry. It's not overly complicated, but you do have to be able to hear if you're on the soundboard. You do have to be able to pay attention if you're a ProPresenter. Wirecast Wirecast takes a little more tech, but the other two we can teach you. But we're just trying to beef that up. We have some great volunteers, but we need to have some more people to help them. So if that's you, contact me, contact Pastor Chuck, and we'll get you in touch with where we need to go. But thanks for joining us this week, and we'll talk to you later. Have a great week.
God bless you.